I am Halli Casser-Jayne, and welcome to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show, where along with my partner in politics, veteran White House correspondent and Time and Newsweek alum Matthew Cooper, we slice and dice all things politics, and some days, our lawmakers too. Before we get started, the Halli Casser-Jayne Show podcast is always available at hallicasserjayne.com and wherever you most like to listen to your podcasts. And be sure to follow us on Twitter at Halli Show Quotes. Now this week on the Halli Casser-Jayne Show podcast with Matthew Cooper, we have some breaking news for you. But before we make our big announcement, we begin with our weekly take on all things politics. It's Halli and Matt time. Here we go. As we begin every week, I say, good morning, Matthew. And Matthew says to Halli.
Yeah, good morning, Halli.
So, Matt, before we get into this show, I have an important announcement to make. But everybody, you have to wait to the end. You know about it, but nobody else does. So, we have to wait to the end of the show. And so stick around, folks, for the hour. And I'll let you know what's going on. So there you go. That's where we begin. And then we go to what we do best, talk about politics. Matt, as the year comes to the end, as we get through the Christmas and the Thanksgiving holidays, politics, I don't know about you, but I feel like politics is taking this country to a precipice. I'm not sure if we were forced to jump that we would survive. I mean, that's where I begin. And this Kyle Rittenhouse thing, let's talk about that first. This says it all to me. This encompasses everything that is wacky in this country. Give us a little background first, because I don't know that everybody really understood what was going on with that, and then we'll take it from there.
Oh, sure. Well, not long after the George Floyd murder in Minnesota, there was a police shooting of a black man in Kenosha, Wisconsin, a small city on the lake. The circumstances of the shooting are a little complicated. The police had been called out for a domestic dispute, and the fellow had a knife, and the cops shot him. There's some video of it, but needless to say, the shooting sparked outrage in Kenosha, and the protests quickly turned into more violent acts. Bombings of police cruisers and lots of cars set afire and such. So in that context, Kyle Rittenhouse, a then 17-year-old, whose father lived in Kenosha, but he lived with his mother about 20 miles away over the state line in Illinois, went up to Kenosha, took out, I believe, his father's rifle, which he was allowed to carry, and kind of went around the city. He helped do some repairs, and then he was out on a particularly violent night and got into a confrontation with different protesters, and wound up shooting I think 3 of them, killing a couple. So he was charged with various crimes related to that, and his defense was self-defense, that he was out there and he was in danger for his life. And the jury basically agreed with that claim, and so he was acquitted on all counts at the end of last week. Wisconsin's laws seem to give a pretty wide berth to self-defense. That combined with a pretty inept prosecutor, led to a verdict that was not a huge surprise, but nevertheless sparked its own outrage, because people thought, hey, what's this kid doing out there with a rifle anyway? And was it really self-defense? Because, in at least one case, he had already impaled one of his supposed attackers. So did he need to keep shooting? And so on. So that's the gist of the case.
It's a crazy case. First of all, he was not allowed.
Was that a good summary?
That was pretty good. Because there was a lot to do, and I think he did it well. The only place I would differ with you is he was not allowed to have that gun. That was his father's gun. He wasn't licensed to use that gun. That said, He didn't bring up the judge either, who was a wackadoodle. I mean, oh my God, what was wrong with that man?
Right.
But let's get down to the nitty gritty here. A minor crosses a border, goes into a city, and basically is doing vigilante justice. I mean, if he can do that, why can't I? Why can't you? Why can't O.J. Simpson? I mean, this is really nutty stuff, and this is why I said this gets to the heart. I mean, take this with that vigilante abortion law coming out of Texas. What is this? What's happening to this country? Anybody? There's no law enforcement? This is like the friggin' Wild West. Does this not tick you off? Does this not make you nervous? There have already been people who were going, well, using his defense. Well, I'm just, doing my thing. I can do it.
Yeah. Well, I think I think you'll probably see more cases like this. It's got echoes of the Trayvon Martin case in Florida.
Right.
Florida has an even more aggressive stand your ground law that gives even wider berth to someone who feels like their life is endangered. So it's, I think the combination of people taking things into their own hands and the law giving a big piece of space to act out means, this won't be the last of these things. And of course, there's another trial going on. It's a somewhat different case, but has some of the same vigilante elements where, white guys engaged in what they say was a citizen's arrest, wound up shooting and killing a young black man in coastal Georgia. So I agree with you.
Yeah, you do.
I agree with you. It's very despairing.
And the thing about it is that what makes this democracy different from other countries? And we're going to talk about that a little later in one respect. But if there is no rule of law, and I'm going to take Merrick Garland on this, because the minute that thing came down, they should have been prepared for it. And I think this becomes a federal case that needs to look at this and step in and say, now wait a minute here, on multiple levels, and silence comes from the Justice Department, and it shouldn't. Just like the families of the victims have a right to sue in civil court, which I think they need to do. Speaking of O.J. Simpson, there are a lot of avenues to go to fix this, because, it may be true that the law is very indistinct or non-distinct. I don't know which one to use there, but the fact of the matter is, then it needs to be fixed because otherwise you do have vigilante. In other words, you have vigilante justice because there aren't enough laws to protect Mr. and Mrs. Average Citizen. So I think, there's the federal issue, and I think that comes into play here. And obviously, on the local level, there needs to be a civil suit. Because what happened? Fox News went wackadoodle with this, and we'll talk about that too, but even worse than that, you have this crazy with Facebook. The algorithms went nuts all on this 5 minutes after the verdict came in. Did you read about that? I mean, they were just sending everybody to conservative sites. Facebook, I mean.
No, I didn't know that.
Or Meta, whatever the hell he wants to call it these days. The repercussions of this, I just think, are gargantuan. And I just don't see how that anybody is really taking this, other than the bleeding heart liberals. Oh my gosh, a kid with a gun crossing state lines, I think it needs to be a much bigger thing than that. And I don't think it's a Democratic Party issue. I think it's a American issue. We've got to have a rule of law here. And 17-year-olds don't have the right to point a gun at me. You're quiet at the other end. Right. I always get crazy when you get quiet at the other end. Like, is he thinking, or is he going? Here she goes again. I mean,
Yeah. No. Look, I mean, it's not an easy thing to fix the laws, because the right to self-defense is part of common law for a long time. So how you exactly adjust the laws, I don't know if you can adjust them on the defense side, but you can certainly have more gun control on the brandishing weapons side.
Well, gun control. What?
Well, that's the problem. It's very hard to, have any gun control, as we know. So,
yeah, like I said, this is, I don't think people realize the magnitude of this and what this can mean in an already, crazy, violent, out of control, everybody, hating each other environment. Fort Sumter, it takes one bad bullet.
Yeah. Well, there were the protesters too. That was the other talk about vigilantism, right? You did have people, setting fire to half of Kenosha that night.
I totally agree with that, but I don't think they're the same thing.
Right. Well,
I don't think they're on par with each other.
No, nobody with common sense wants their teenage kid heading off to a riot. And
didn't the mother drive him?
I believe the mother took again, the parents are divorced, so he goes up there a lot, and the mother took him there, and the gun's at his father, so it's not like he transported the gun, but then he took the gun, and it's a hunting state, so there are a lot of
hunting people versus hunting deer.
Right. Well, pretty easy to walk around with a rifle.
You know what I'm saying, though.
I know. Yeah. I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
In any event, we know the basics of what happened. Now this Arbery case is going to be, I think, it's racially charged in a way the other one wasn't, because everyone who Rittenhouse is white and everyone he shot was white. So, although the protests had a racial origin, he never shot anyone who was black, which I think would only have made this more of a conflagration. But in the Arbery case, the victim is black, the shooters are white.
Well, here we go again.
I think they're more likely to be convicted here. They're claiming a citizen's arrest. You can't, as I understand the law, you can't make a citizen's arrest well after the fact. I mean, they believe that this Arbery, this young man, had been pilfering things from a home renovation in their neighborhood, and they'd been on the lookout for him, and then they saw him, and they basically chased him, and I think that's going to be tougher to defend in Georgia. But, you never know, and it's certainly possible they'll get acquitted, and that, I think, will be a matter of contention around the country in a way that even the Rittenhouse trial was not.
My point being, here's the deal. And
your point very valid. Right? No,
well, it's just that
vigilantism.
It's vigilant.
Or you want to a new point.
Well, no, it's vigilantism on the one hand, the racially charged kind of stuff. Here we go again. Don't we want this solved? Isn't this just a blight on America that this is still going on in 2021? This kind of crap, and racial issues are still at the forefront and unsettled. But that said, I still say that when you go back to the Rittenhouse thing, that's a horse of a different color. Not to be funny. I mean it quite seriously.
Right.
That this is something that just is starting to percolate in our society. I mean, it was always there. I lived in West Virginia, and up in them there hills, darling, you had vigilante groups, and all that kind of, the white supremacists, doing their thing, and but they were afraid to come out from the hills, and now it's becoming almost mainstream to some degree, and I just.
Well, I think that's right. On the other hand, Arbery, tried to take the gun from his pursuers.
Yeah.
Which, sounds like a pretty legitimate form of self-defense when these, nuts are chasing you in a truck with rifles.
Sure. Yeah.
And that's it, and again, if he had shot his pursuers, I think we would look at that as pretty legitimate self-defense.
Well, I do, but the difference is you have a black man involved versus you don't. And I think that also, shades things. But let's go to this, though, because based on this conversation that we're having, I mean, the first thing I want to say to you is I think we're past the point of saying the Republican Party has a crazy right-wing edge to it. The Republican Party is now certifiably crazy right-wing lunatics, far right. That's just who it is. It's not a faction of, it is. And I'm hoping people are starting to realize there is nobody, because if they keep their mouths shut, they are complicit. They are part of the problem. So that said, Tucker Carlson, your favorite person in the whole wide world, during the trial has embedded a camera so that he can have...
Right.
Okay.
The Rittenhouse and his legal team have been cooperating on the documentary with Tucker. Yes. And that starts to air tonight. What
do you even say to this? I have a problem with it, because if it was a legitimate news organization, I would not maybe have a problem with it. But we know that Fox is not a legitimate news organization. Let me just say that Stephen Hayes and Jonah Goldberg resigned their positions as Fox commentators because of the crazy that's coming out of Tucker's mouth, and that and them not doing anything about it over the suits.
Right. Well, I
Jonah Goldberg? I mean, that's pretty amazing to me. I mean, Stephen Hayes has always been on the fence, but Jonah Goldberg, whose mother, was so responsible for Clinton.
Sure, the Clinton.
Come on, this is crazy. I mean, where are we in all of this?
Well, I think we know, right? I mean, I think Fox has been an amplification of the craziest stuff out there, and especially in prime time. And it's really, it's toxic, and it's interesting to think what might have happened with Rittenhouse. If it had been known during the trial that he was, cooperating with Fox and becoming saying himself up to be a Fox martyr.
And get very rich.
We knew that Fox commentators were. Yeah. We knew Fox commentators were speaking highly of him, but we didn't know that he was, enjoying their embrace. And now we do. I guess that doesn't change the legal facts, but it's,
Or does it?
Well, I think it probably it may well have influenced a jury. Yeah. I mean, it may well have, knowing that, he was like, because he had not been portraying himself as having any political intent. He portrayed himself as an earnest teenager who went to help people in Kenosha, and that's why he was doing volunteer work during the day, and he was just out at night with the rifle to try to safeguard property, and he didn't have a political agenda. That was the way his lawyers portrayed him. It's the way he portrayed himself.
And also what he says, if you're aware the camera is on, or the microphone is on, come on, you and I do it, right? What you say is going to be slightly altered by the fact that you're aware that what you say is going to...
Yeah, I mean, the trial was, televised, but the presence of a documentary crew does...
Right, so
and we'll see what behind the scenes is like, Fox style.
Oh, bizarre. I can't wait to see this. By the way, Chris Wallace and Brett Baer also complained about Carlson's disinformation campaign to no avail. But it is interesting to me that Murdoch said this week that he wishes that Trump would shut up and start talking about the future and not the past.
Yeah, that's pretty light. I mean, I saw that. That's kind of what Christie is saying.
Yeah. Well,
it's pretty light criticism.
But coordinated.
Probably. But it's not much of a pullback.
Well, I think it's a step.
Pulling back It's not pulling back Ingraham, Hannity, and Tucker.
By the way, did you see that piece with Ingram with
the three horsemen of the apocalypse?
Oh my God, giddy up! Did you see that thing with Ingram and the guy with the U?
Oh, it's very funny. Yeah.
By the way, if she puts any more Botox in her lips, honey.
Yeah, well, she's
she's getting along in the tooth, and it's starting to show. Sorry, but it's true. So I wanted to talk about Fox News also in this you probably understand how this works better than I do. The FCC is not in control of cable. You and I have discussed this numerous times. Why not?
Right.
Why is there no control of cable, which is now the new over-the-air wave that most people get their information from? I think that's an issue. And I think somebody who was bold... Go ahead. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to change the laws, and that could happen. I mean, a big part of it was not about cable, but it was about the equal time ruling. There used to be a ruling that if you had a half-hour conservatives, right, you had to have a half-hour liberals, and that got blown up in the 90s, and that made it possible for talk radio to be, all conservative all the time. Without that, you wouldn't have had a Rush Limbaugh. Yeah, I mean, you can always change the statutes. I don't know if this is something that can be fixed by law so much as culture,
No, I think it can be fixed by law, and I think it's something that the Democrats really need to get their little set their eye on and start moving to change how some of this is regulated. You can always say you have a choice about what comes into your home. You really don't. You know what I mean? You really don't. Because if it doesn't come out in one way, it comes in another way.
Well, that's the thing, and I don't know how much, if you somehow were able to change the statutes regarding cable news, there's always the internet, and, it's going to come out.
Well, cable's on the internet these days, that's why I'm saying. There could be control because cable is now functionally on the internet. I mean, there's nobody who can't get MSNBC or Fox or anything they want and watch it on the internet and not via your streaming service or your...
Yeah.
So
right.
I do think...
Well, I assume as a Fox Nation subscriber, you got issues with this.
I don't do Fox. All right. So
Fox Nation, in addition to your Fox News.
Yes. Oh, God, throw up.
It's your paid monthly subscription.
I don't know if I ever told you
Although
this.
it's free for first responders for a year.
You obviously have subscribed.
I was thinking about it for just the experience, but no, I'm not a subscriber. I do watch, as you know, we talk about.
Yeah, I love
catch
the fact
Tucker a fair amount.
Yeah, no, I think that's great.
I don't watch Hannity and Laura. They're just not. They're not as
entertaining.
They're not as art. They're not as. It's not that Tucker's entertaining. He was entertaining for a while. Now he's. But he is more skillful and he is smarter. And so it's like, it's like listening to Father Coughlin or,
whoa. Whoa. I mean, whoa. I don't know, kiddo. Better you than me. That's all I have to say. I find what was once almost amusing to me, because he in a way it was amusing that he could play it the way he played it, Tucker, is no longer amusing because he's bought his own crap.
No, I totally agree. It's more whacked out every week.
Exactly.
Which
makes you wonder.
I was one of the first guests on the Primetime Show, and the Primetime Show it was always a right-wing nutty, but it was a different cast. He had liberal. He had in-studio guests.
Yeah, he mixed it up.
He had interviews. Yeah. He had other topics. It was sort of more... critiquing excesses of the left, and then it became, much more anti-immigrant, and now it's, January 6th was a liberal plot. He's very torn about January 6th. Some days it was just tourists, taking advantage of the Capitol.
God.
Doing some self-sightseeing.
I mean, really, right?
Other days it was a liberal FBI deep state plot to discredit conservatives, so...
Yeah, well,
take your pick.
I will give you this on Tucker Carlson from Halli. I always had a red flag on him, going back years and years and years and years. He never struck me as being grounded. I had to think about the word. I always thought he had a right-wing wackadoodle streak in him, and didn't like him for that reason. I don't know why. I just sensed coming out of him that there was a part of him that was off the wall.
Well, I hear where you're coming from. I've known him a long time, so
I
did not have that take, but
I did.
Clearly, you were well.
I don't know why. So I, it's interesting to me. I'm not shocked by where he is, and to tell you the truth, he reminds me of, by the way, what's his name? Florida Senator.
Rubio?
No, the other one.
Getz.
No, he's not a senator.
Rick Scott.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, man, where did that go? That was because I just despise. There's a certain crazy to both of those men that's very equal. And interesting, both of them were adopted. I don't know if that has something to do with it, but they both have that.
I didn't know Tucker's adopted.
Tucker's adopted. I think there's a twist in both of them that's just off by about 10 beats, which is no small thing to be off about. We have to move on. I want to go back to Build Back Better. So I'm going to say to you that, that old line about never underestimate Nancy Pelosi comes to mind. However, I don't know that this was the kind of win that she normally gets, but what are your thoughts? Where do we go with this?
It took a few times. It wasn't easy, but, she did get it, and, they got it out of the House, and now they have to get it through the Senate. But the Senate's going to rewrite it substantially, so that's going to have to go through another House vote. So, we'll see. It's still got a ways to get over the finish line. But, look, I think she did the best. I think she did pretty well, given a huge divide in the Democratic caucus at various times. So she got it. She got it. She only lost, 6 Democrats. I think the squad looks kind of silly not supporting it, but that's their brand.
First of all, to her credit, 50-50. I mean, everything is against getting any legislation passed. This is not like Obama. She did it. So I'll give her that, because who would have thought? Seriously, because everything was against her getting this whatever. What came out, like you said, is going to change anyway. And I'm not sure what came out is, there's so much that was left out. So I can see where the progressives are pretty, upset about it. And they're counting that they can trust Joe to see it through to what they need and what they want, in the ultimate bill. But it leads us to the same old question, my friend. And that is, what happens in the Senate? And is Joe Manchin going to, tank it? Because I'm thinking he is. I've been back and forth on this, but price of coal right now is so high, honey, he doesn't want nothing to get in the way of him and coal mining.
Yeah. Well, I don't think you're wrong. I think he could tank it.
It's so bizarre. His poll numbers are very high in West Virginia, and yet he is the one person stopping West Virginians who need it the most from getting the money that they need in their pockets and the relief that they need in their pockets. It's just utterly bizarre. And then it gets back to, Democratic Party's messaging, and they could take over the airwaves in West Virginia and just do and the road signs, which are plentiful, by the way, even though they're not supposed to be. I just think the Dems really need to address how they're communicating with West Virginians on this.
Right.
I want to talk about Terry McAuliffe, because you know what? If it weren't for Terry sacrificing his Virginia governorship, the bill wouldn't have gotten passed. So thank you, Terry. You lost the governorship, but you got the bill passed and out of the House.
You're the reasoning being that it scared Democrats.
It scared them to. Yeah, absolutely. Within a second it was passed. All those months, and they couldn't get it done. And then Terry loses, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, this is a problem. We better fix this. So it was a hell of a sacrifice. Well,
I think that makes sense.
And that's a pity. What was left behind in Virginia, by the way, this suddenly turning blue. Have you seen this lieutenant governor they elected? This
the black woman who's the new lieutenant governor elect.
Off the friggin' wall.
I don't know much about her.
Well,
she's
don't.
Conservative.
Conservative isn't even though she's one of the right wingers. She doesn't want to tell you about being vaccinated, playing the mandate thing. She's all in.
Yeah, but
she's all in. It's just, oh my God.
Well, there you go.
another thing I wanted to talk to you about, I don't know if you were, Ann Coulter, who has been relatively quiet and not getting a lot of press, put a piece out the day after it was posted. Did you happen to see what she wrote?
No, I did not see it.
It was very, very interesting. I tried to get a hold of a copy of it today and couldn't get to it. But she attacks the bill and says that if you read it, which she apparently has, you will see that all the money that they're saying is going to the poor and the middle class is, except it's going to Native Americans, people of color, and not white people. And she did a list. I suggest you take a look at it if you can. I'm sure it's out there, because it really, I can see the Republicans going to town on this, because it is very clearly, like, even the money that goes for water goes to Native Americans. Now, that's my number one thing. In fact, I'm going to talk about it in a minute. But she built a case that if you read the fine print, it's very specifically to blacks and Native Americans and people of color.
Okay.
So take a look at it, because it becomes a problem later. Okay. But you think they're gonna, and I want to talk about Chuck Schumer, because there was a lot of gaffe. People were really giving him a hard time, saying he was quiet, that she overstepped him, Nancy, and went directly to the senators, to make sure that they were going to be able to do something with this. I don't agree with that, because I think the brilliance of Nancy and Chuck has been that they work together brilliantly, and they play good cop, bad cop. And, Schumer doesn't command the kind of front row seat that everybody else does. He's happy to be in the background and work his magic that way. So get off Chuck Schumer's case, folks. Let's see what happens next before you beat him up.
Don't beat up Chuck.
Don't beat up Chuck. I mean, the two of them have worked brilliantly together, and I think she gets too much credit for some of the stuff that he's been able to negotiate and do. So I want to take this to Joe Biden. Poll numbers, poll numbers are showing an uptick again a little bit. I think it was at 44, which is more an outlier, but it's not, because the other polls are also incrementally going up. I just want to say that you can beat the hell out of this guy, too. He's gotten major legislation passed. He's the most underrated president that we've had in a long time for his accomplishments in a very short 10 months or 12 months, whatever it is. Don't you agree?
Well, yeah. I mean, he's got a fair amount done. The rescue plan that passed earlier this year was a big, big bill.
Infrastructure?
And, the vaccine rollout, and of course, the infrastructure bill. So he has passed some pretty major stuff.
I mean, in this climate, why is this even your response to what I'm saying, confounds me? I mean, seriously, look what he's done under the worst circumstances ever, with Trump in the background of all of this. I don't know. I think that he's making a speech tomorrow on the economy. Good. But the fact is, geez, Matt, this is pretty extraordinary that they've gotten this much done. I'm impressed.
Yeah. No, I'm not disagreeing with you. You know me. I'm just I stay chill.
I want you to get unchill on this. Because I think I know. But
I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah.
I'm agreeing with you.
Okay, I feel better now.
He's gotten more done than he's gotten credit for. I'm with you.
Okay. And I think that's important. What? You know what?
Right, but all the focus is on this next thing now. And,
well, it's always on the next thing. But you got to stop for a minute and give the guy credit for what he has accomplished, and that will help him accomplish more, maybe, or maybe not.
I mean, even the Republicans say he's had a socialist takeover, so
it's not socialist.
In a way, I know it's not, but they're kind of giving him credit for doing a lot in their own convoluted way.
They're being better at the spin.
Yeah, well, they're just but they're acknowledging that he's doing things. They're not saying he can't do anything.
Yeah, just the wrong thing.
Right.
but I do think he's not getting credit where credit is due. And as I'm speaking to you, I'm reweighing this in my mind as to how they play it, because if they oversell it, then that puts an impediment to getting anything further done. Look, he's done this much damage already. So maybe they're right to play to keep it back. Yeah. Okay, we're talking about him. Let's go to Kamala Harris. Oy vey, did she have a bad week. But she's had a bad run, hasn't she? She was president of the United States, the first woman of color to be president of the United States for a second.
And she did have the presidential powers.
All because of a colonoscopy. A colonoscopy gave us the first woman president.
Yeah, it's not quite the glorious feminist moment some had dreamed of, but you take what you can get. And if you get an hour's worth of a female commander-in-chief, it's worth it.
She does have problems. She has problems.
She does. On the other hand, look, the vice presidency is a crazy cat, and everyone who's had it has had problems because it's
not Joe.
Not Joe. You got all the visibility and none of the authority. Not Joe Biden. Not Al Gore. Joe had his moments. Joe had his moments that were not so great for him, but he had better ones. Look, I agree she's not had any great moments in the last 9-10 months, but
I think there's something different going on here than moments. You want to hear?
Yeah, of course.
No, because this actually, I was looking back. She's had a problem all along, including with her campaign for president. She is not a good delegator of authority, and she does not listen to the people who she puts in to run things for her. And this goes back even to her California days. She has a long history of not getting along with people, and it's showing up in how she comes across. She likes to control her own picture, and I think that's part of what's going on. They did fire her number one, right, the day after this story broke that she was, things were out of control in her office. So it must be true, or the woman quit who was doing that job. But I need to say this. I need to say that I think that she's got a problem, governing her own office. And she's black and she's a woman, so that makes it worse. Black, Asian, woman of color.
Right.
Yeah.
Look, we're in the middle of a pile-on, but it may not last. So
I hope. But it hasn't waned since she took office. I mean, they knocked her down
question.
On her. Yeah. So I think there's an issue there, and sometimes I think it's coming out of Biden's office because he's so worried about getting that second run for president, which he's indicated he wants, and he doesn't want her standing in his way, and he sees her as. So who knows what's being orchestrated from the Biden office either. I mean, this is politics, folks. It gets ugly on all levels. So we put that out there. Watch what happens with Kamala. Now we need to get to COVID. Matthew, we need to get to COVID. This is scary stuff.
I'm not stopping you from COVID. I'm not stopping you.
This is getting dangerous out there. I mean, what's going on in Europe?
You used to begin with a death count.
I did, but here's what I'm going to say to you. More people died of COVID in 2021 than did in 2020, despite the vaccine's availability.
Right.
And in a way, I am as guilty as every other, person who runs either a podcast, a website, a political commentator, because I've allowed it to become, the fourth or the fifth story when it probably still should be the number one story. But you get tired of wanting to keep talking. But this is what's going on in Europe now is terrifying.
Not good.
Merkel says it's the worst it's ever been. And if she says that, yikes. I don't know. $4,000 fine in Australia if you're not vaccinated. That's probably a smart thing to do. Israel is thinking fourth booster. They're having mass demonstrations all throughout Europe about lockdowns. Meantime, here we've got 95% of federal workforce has been back compliant with the COVID mandate, and 58% of Americans are fully vaxxed. Well, you can't get to herd immunity until you're in the 79 to 80%, so we're not even close. And then you got lunatics like my governor down here who opens a special session so that they can limit the amount of mandate that can be done. And Disney complies within 15 minutes, by the way, and said they're putting the mandate for their workers on hold. I mean, what are people doing? And now we're all going to get together for Thanksgiving, and what? What good comes out of that?
Well, no good if you're not taking precautions. I mean, if Grandma's still alive, she may not be after this.
No, and some of these underreported story also is it's back to the crazy that was last January with people dying in senior citizens' homes because they're not getting boosters, and so it's running rampant through these homes again.
Yeah.
The whole thing is heartbreaking and mystifying and crazy, and I think this vaccine ain't the wonder drug they thought it was going to be. And they need to come up with something else, and I guess maybe that's what the pill is. I don't know. But this virus doesn't want to go away. No question. And no question. I mean, this is going to be a long, hard slog. I don't know how much more I can take of this. What about you? I don't have a choice.
Candidly, I feel like I've gotten used to it. I mean,
really?
I go to a crowded place, I put on a mask, I go outside, I take the mask off, I mean, it's not like, I don't know, I don't like it, but it's not rocket science either,
I think the part that gets me is, first of all, you always have to think about it. You can't just go out, you have to think about what you're doing, particularly down here where nobody's, complying. So,
right.
But you do think about going out, don't you? Or you don't? Maybe you don't.
No, I mean, I go out and...
Yeah, but do you think about it?
Do I think about, like, wearing a mask or stuff?
Or do you think about, well, maybe I won't go here today, I'll do this all in one fell swoop because I don't want to...
No,
you're chill.
I go to the grocery store, do whatever I have to do, but, I put on a mask when I go in. It hasn't really changed what I do. I mean, I guess I haven't been to like a concert or anything really, densely packed since this started.
Would you?
I've ridden the New York subways. I've done other things that involve crowds. Having been inoculated, including a booster shot and wearing a mask, I feel pretty safe out there.
Okay. All right, maybe I'm overreacting.
I mean, I think, that's kind of my take. It's kind of go, live my life.
Until I hear about the breakthrough cases, which are all over the place. So,
right.
and then
but the breakthroughs, generally the breakthroughs have been not too bad. But, there is a risk.
Well, I told you, a very close friend of mine spent almost 2 months in the hospital with a breakthrough case. So, hello.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. It's definitely possible. But... That's how I'm dealing.
Yeah, well, no, you're smarter than I don't know, because I'm usually fearless.
And that's kind of how people up here are dealing with it.
Well, I think it's different down here because you got a governor who just doesn't care and just is trying to kill people left and right. I mean, everything he does is about, death sentence. How do I kill and Republicans because they're the ones who are dying from it? How do I kill them this week? What crazy can I do? Because he and Trump are now starting to go at loggerheads because Trump sees him as a real threat to any decision that old Trumper might make. But before we get to that, I want to talk about inflation. And very quickly, I want to talk, first of all, Biden nominated or renominated Jerome Powell for the Federal Reserve, and they're together on this thing, and he thinks inflation's not such a big to-do, and it's going to, it's on the wane. It will solve itself. That said, the supply chain crisis seems to be abating somewhat. Thanks to Biden, putting 24 hours on the West Coast, container ships, and they're
right.
less backed up than they were. Walmart says it's fully stocked for the holidays.
Yeah, that's great.
And that's good. Price of gas down here is insane. And we have the highest gas tax in the country. And they're trying to get this governor to, put a hold on the gas tax for a little bit, and he won't even go there yet. So, and the price of food, I don't have to tell you. I'm going to take a little different tact on this thing. This is why I want to talk to you about inflation. You know what I think inflation is right now, Matt? Greed.
What's inflation?
Greed.
Oh, you think there's price gouging?
There's price gouging going on everywhere. From landlords to the food markets to whatever. I will say sure, retail took a beating last year, and they're just trying to make up the bottom line on this. But you can see in every avenue, if everybody would just stay put for 5 minutes and not raise your price on this and not raise your price on that and not, bump up your rentals and it would go away quickly. So it's greed.
Could be. Could be.
Do you agree? Do you see that?
Their weekly could be.
I mean, you could stop it. You could stop it.
Well, but if the costs are getting passed on to the grocers and the gas station owners,
So eat it for 5 minutes.
Well, why should they eat it?
Because they make huge profits, and they're eating it on the backs of the little guy.
Well, not the gas station owner.
If the gas station owner is tacking on above everything else, first of all, we know that the price of gas shouldn't be what it is because the supply apparently is back to normal, if not ahead of normal, in the Middle East.
Hello?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Hello?
I'm here. Hello?
Okay.
Okay. The supply of gas is back to normal. It's available. So I'm just saying, this is a president of the United States sitting and having a fireside chat and saying, folks, let's just put a hold on everything for a minute and let's let this thing get back into balance. Could be done. Just saying, you don't agree. I don't think you always have to pass on your losses when you're big firms.
Well, no, they don't always pass on their losses, but
prices at Walmart are higher than any place else, and they're still on we're Walmart and we're cheaper. No, they're not. No, they're not.
Right.
Okay. Lightning round.
Okay. Yes. As we wind down, the lightning round.
Beto O'Rourke is running for governor again. Polls are horrible. He's down 6 points as of this morning. Oddly enough, Matthew McConaughey is up by 8 against Abbott.
Sure.
But what does he have to lose? Nothing. Might as well run, right?
Well, right. Yeah, and then, once you have to start taking positions, being a politician, it's going to come down.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens with that race.
Right.
I really, and particularly because, remember that whole thing with the power grid in Texas because of Abbott? I have friends there who telling me they're getting bills for $800 a month for their electric. Oh, my God.
Yowza.
I mean, oh, my God.
Not good. Not good. Not good.
European think tanks add the U.S. to the list of backsliding democracies for the first time. How do you feel about that?
Well, that's embarrassing. That's embarrassing. Not totally unjustified. That's embarrassing.
Gosar is censured.
Well, at the very least, yeah. Well, he's a serious nut job.
I think he's a dangerous nut job.
Well, I agree. He goes to a lot of white nationalist defense. Not a good guy. Why
is he still in the Senate?
750,000 Arizonans in his district. I mean,
he needs to go. Speaking of districts and gerrymandering, as Georgia grows more Democratic, Matt, its members of Congress will not because of the crazy redistricting gerrymandering they're doing there. I mean, if they don't fix this, the Democrats and however they play the filibuster and get this voting rights thing done, I'm sorry, it's curtains for the Democratic Party. Got any thoughts on that?
Well, it's a big year coming up. It's a census year. It's a redistricting year. I think they're going to do a little better on the redistricting than is commonly thought, especially in Illinois, New York, some other places. So we'll see.
I don't share your thoughts on that.
I understand.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about Trump for a second. Biden says he's running for re-election. Trump's big line in the last 24 hours was under his presidency, he would have done great things with Russia.
Well, that's, I'm sure he would have, from Russia's point of view.
I mean, it's a parlor game. What's he up to? He is at war, by the way, with Ron DeSantis at the moment. He's getting really nervous about, my throat starts to tickle, I had to take a drink. He is getting nervous.
Well, he wants a clear field, but, he's not going to get it.
Well, the other part of it is it looks like some Republicans are backing down and saying, wait a minute, maybe we don't want them or we don't need them.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see where it's at in 3 years. But for now, he's the biggest thing in the room. So,
So who's the most influential politician of 2021? Biden, Manchin, or Trump?
I think it's not Trump. Well, of course, January 6th was 2020.
Isn't that an interesting question this year?
It is an interesting question. I think you could I think you got to say Biden just because his bills, his presidency, his reversing Trump stuff, I think you got to say Biden. But it's a good question.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's good. That's a good note to end on.
Well, no, it's not. We have a couple more things. I didn't give you my answer.
Oh, okay. What's your answer?
Well, thanks for asking.
Well, what's your answer? I didn't know.
No, I'm not going to answer now because you didn't ask. I'm not going to ask. I had a
I literally just asked.
Because I said what I said. You don't really care. It's all right. I'm going to remember that. I'm not going to answer. No,
all right.
I'll tell you honestly. I don't think it can answer until December 31st because I think that if he gets BBB through and Manchin comes on board, I think that's where the difference is going to be.
All right.
So there's that. Now, a couple of things I wanted to mention before I give a big speech. I want to tell you that, I did a book with the National Park Service on Antietam Battlefield, and so I very love those folks. Great time in my life. They just appointed the first ever Native American to lead the National Park Service. And I just think that's wonderful because so much, particularly out west, of our national parks are actually on Native land, which they had to give up in order to make the parks, which they didn't do. They didn't make the parks necessarily only for conservation because they also ripped the shit out of, the things like gold and whatever that were on this parkland. So I think that's a really good thing. So you have somebody in Interior now in the cabinet who's a native and whatever, and maybe things will get the wrong will be righted to some degree. I'm looking forward to seeing how these two navigate that. Goldie Hawn turned 75. I just have to tell you, gasp. Okay, I'm going to leave that there. Now, I said at the beginning of the show, I had something to announce. I've been doing this for 15 years, Matt. Oh my God, can you believe that? Because I can't. I'm taking some time off for the first time in 15 years. And I don't know how I'm going to get from day to day because you all know that I live, breathe, and die all this. But I have a project that's in the works, and I'm not yet. I hoped I would be able to say that I could talk about it, but I can't. But something exciting is coming down the pike, and I don't want to give it, as they say in Judaism, a kinahara, right? By talking about it before it's all signed, sealed, and delivered. But I am. And so Matt and I will not be doing anything for the next at least 6 weeks through January when Congress comes back in. So things are going to be a little different for me, and I'm going to miss talking Matt on a weekly basis. You will be back in January, my friend. Hello, Matthew.
Yeah.
And
yes.
And you'll be thinking of me?
Halli, I'm still in shock. I'm just trying to get over this.
You're such a jerk. I love you.
I think your listeners are going to miss you, and I'll miss you. But I'm glad you're taking time off.
Yeah,
it's good.
I needed it, and
you need it. So yeah, enjoy it.
So, but we will be posting some new shows, believe it or not, which we've already put together and put into the can with some very interesting guests and bringing back some of the best of it. So check in Wednesdays or Thursdays when we'll be posting new stuff while Matt and I have our little sabbatical here. And on that note, here's what I say to you, Matthew. I love you very much.
Thanks, Halli. Love you too.
Happy
Always
Thanksgiving.
Great to talk to you.
Happy Christmas.
And likewise, great holidays, and just relax. You deserve it.
All right, sweetie. Talk to you soon.
All right. Talk to you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you for tuning in to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show, a production of Resec LLC. The Halli Casser-Jayne Show posts new podcasts Wednesdays, 3 p.m. Eastern, and is available at hallicasserjayne.com and on all your favorite apps. Be sure to visit us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and follow me on Twitter at The Halli CJ Show. Until next time, this is Halli Casser-Jayne.